Hey, welcome back to the next episode. So, this episode is going to be about my time in the van, passing through San Antonio, and a few days I spent around there. Spent a few days near Conroe, Texas, and did a few events around that area as well. And then spent 10 days camping out in the forest, kind of off grid, in Davy Crockett National Forest. So, that's what this one's going to be about here. Initially going into San Antonio, this was the first big city that I went to that wasn't immediately busy and overwhelmingly stressful. Um, they say everything's bigger in Texas, and even the roads in Texas are bigger. And even if you're in traffic, it doesn't feel quite as congested and jammed up. I didn't stay in the van while I was in town here. I did stay in a hostel, but this was a different kind of hostel. I had never stayed in a hostel like this before. It's basically just some guy's house. So you can hardly even call it a hostel. But there was a couple other guys that were living there. I think they lived there full time. They kind of just chilled, drank Mountain Dew, and smoked cigarettes and played video games and some big dogs. So out of safety precaution, I took the top bunk. The next day, I took off and went to go explore downtown San Antonio. Um, and San Antonio is where the Alamo is at. So I went and checked out the Alamo to try to remember the Alamo. I went and just wandered around downtown. Beautiful downtown area. The river walk there is glorious. You could spend hours wandering around downtown there and checking out the waterways and all the different little shops and all that. I got a Modelo, some tacos, listened to some mariachi music so that I could fit in. But the real reason that I was even drawn to the city while I stayed in the city, I did want to see the sights, but really I wanted to go see a concert because this was like 6 or 8 months into the original COVID lockdowns, and everything was starting to open up again. And I wanted to go see a live concert. I wanted to go see some music. So I found whatever I could. There was a jazz musician called Kirk Whalum playing. I'd never heard of him, but I was like, figured I'd go check it out. I like jazz. It wasn't the ideal show for me. It was fun to see these people on stage doing their thing. These musicians that were talented. I might even pause the video here pretty quick to insert a little bit of what they were doing, but it was a different kind of concert though. It was, rather than it being, a show where you get down on the dance floor and dance, it was more to sit in the chair and watch. It was a theater show, so it wasn't exactly my style, but it's so nice to go see the show. Upon leaving, I wandered around downtown for a little bit before heading back to the hostel. It's nice being downtown in the city. It's a little more dangerous being in a city at nighttime, obviously, but it's nice wandering around. You get to see the night lights and the nightlife, and you get to see what's going on down there. They had some nice lit up horse carriages pulling people around, which I thought was kind of a cute little feel to the city, kind of a fairy tale type feel to it. There was also protesters there to balance all that out, doing their civil duty, not liking that horses were being used to pull trailers, I suppose. Doing their civil duty. All right, more power to them, I guess. Do your thing. The next thing that caught my eye, though, after the next day when I was taking off from the hostel, I think I stayed there one night, just maybe 2 nights, I can't remember exactly. But when I was taking off, I saw a sign on the side of the road that said Natural Bridge Wildlife Ranch. So, and I'd heard there's a bunch of exotic animals in Texas, so I wanted to go see what they had. Drove up there just north of San Antonio, and basically you just drive through this. It takes about 2 hours or so to get through. You're just driving through, stopping off at a few points along the way to get out and get some pictures of different animals. What are you looking at? Get out of the road. Bird up. They have a rhino, giraffes, gazelles, wildebeest, zebras, a bunch of different birds. Even got a Caesar-Boomafoo at the end. Although it looked like since his show in the 90s, he's fallen on some hard times. He's got a stint at the Wildlife Ranch Penitentiary. It was nice to see him, but unfortunately he has fallen on some hard times. I'm sorry to break it to you, some of the millennials that know the guy. The next thing that caught my eye was, I think I was walking into a coffee shop or something like that, and I saw a sign on the door for Paranormal Circus in Conroe, Texas. So I started to head that direction, which is just north of Houston. Spent a few nights in Sam Houston National Forest, and then I came back and spent Thanksgiving at an RV park in Conroe the day before, or just right around the Paranormal Circus. I made myself up a little Thanksgiving dinner. They didn't have any mini turkeys, so I got a mini chicken all cooked up, some potatoes and gravy, corn, a little nice Thanksgiving dinner. It was pouring down rain at this time. The traveling circus that I went to, the Paranormal Circus, they put up all their tents and they continued on through the rain. And basically, what the Paranormal Circus it's a nightmare of a normal circus, basically. So they have acrobats doing acrobatic things, flips and shit. They have illusionists doing illusions and magic tricks. They have freaks and they have creatures and all this. It was a really entertaining show. Unfortunately, no bearded ladies, but I suppose that's become less rare than it used to be. It was a fun show. It was not something I expected to see in Texas, but something I was glad to see, something a little bit different. Before heading out into the forest, though, I knew I needed to do some work on the van. I needed to get especially just the roof repair done because, like I said, it was raining, but there was also, and it rained a few days out while I was camping, but the roof vent that I had ripped off. It just got old and brittle and got ripped off on the freeway. So I had to get a new one of those and get that replaced before I could head out there. But now that that was replaced, I was ready to start my 10 days out in the forest. And spending 10 days, spending a good chunk of time out in the forest was one of the main things that I wanted to do. It was a big thing on the list. I just wanted to spend at least minimum 10 days, and I thought that was a good amount of time. It was a big thing I want to check off. So I had my phone on me the whole time, but I didn't want to be connected to the internet or social media or text messages or anything like that. So I was on airplane mode the whole time. The nicest thing about this, it was in Davy Crockett. The nicest thing about this was that they had a toilet that you could use. I mean, I got pretty good at pooping in the woods, which is something you get better at over time. You know, you calibrate and your aim gets better and all that, but it's still not the ideal situation. So having a toilet there that I could use was great. No running water. It was just a vault toilet, but still very handy. You'd walk up there every morning and put that to use. Even if there was a bunch of bugs in the corner of it and kind of nasty, it was still nice to have. I went on a lot of walks while I was out there. Kind of got a mapping of the area. You know, like when a cat's in a new home, he goes to every different little corner of the house to map it out and figure out if it's all safe. And it's kind of what I was doing when I was there. Because the more that you explore the area, the more it seems to, I don't know, just become, it feels like you're there and it feels safer and you can kind of enjoy your time there a little bit more the more you map it out. On one of these walks, I did meet an old man that was out there. I'd seen his truck drive by a couple days in a row, and we'd waved at each other and, you know, that whole deal when he's passing by the campsite. But we ended up talking to each other. We started talking about music initially because he saw me playing guitar out by the fire one night. But then to lead him just telling me stories about this forest because he'd grown up in the area. He told me that when he was 8 years old, his mom used to drop him off at one end of the forest and then come back a few hours later and pick him up at the other end of the forest. And then when he was 12, he'd come out here with a blanket, a knife, a lighter, and a .22, and he'd spend the whole weekend in the forest, sleeping on a blanket in front of the fire. Like, man, they made people tougher back then. I feel like if a parent did that nowadays, they would consider it child abuse or something. But I think it made him more of a badass. That's why they were all tough back then, and they could handle themselves a little bit better than a lot of people this modern generation seem to be able to. He did help me told me a few more trails that I could walk around and explore in that area. There was a nice thing about being out here also was a big thing, you know, about traveling in a van by yourself for a year is you get lonely. You're alone, like you're alone for a full year for the most part. You interact with people and you get to know some people, but for the most part, you're rolling solo. But this time, I was happy to be alone. I was glad there was nobody there because it was just me interacting directly with myself. There's no distractions. There's not even my phone, really. I mean, I had some music saved offline, some podcasts, and some audiobooks that I wanted to listen to that I could do that if I wanted to for a little entertainment, but there was no other distractions. You know, I'm not constantly Googling things or checking Instagram or whatever it is or waiting on text messages or nothing like that. And there's no one to blame, you know, there's nothing to like, I can't blame other drivers for stupid things that are going on. I can only blame myself. And it gives me an opportunity to see what I value. It's like a direct interaction with myself, and I get to see what I value, because you see what you spend your day doing. I think if you want to understand what people value, you don't necessarily listen. I mean, you listen to what they say. People can say whatever they want, but if you really want to know what people value, you look at what they do. So that's how it's a direct interaction with myself. It's just me out there. I get to see what I value. What do I spend my time doing? The things that obviously become important is food, water, cleanliness, organization, and then entertainment sort of comes in at the end. Music or things like that. You start to notice things like, what am I spending my day doing, and what am I craving to do right now? I had a lot of anger I was dealing with. I was pretty angry, and something that, like, I noticed. Okay, so here's an example of how how I would deal with it. So I was having this. I was really angry over something stupid probably, and just mad, saying terrible words. And I took my favorite tool that I have, which was a mini shovel that my brother got me, and I was like using it like an axe on a tree. And then it broke on the tree, and I felt like an idiot. And I got to see directly the consequences of my anger, that I broke my favorite tool, and there was no one to blame. It's just me being an idiot, and I got to see that directly and see the consequences of that. I did a lot of writing while I was out there too, which is a really useful technique for me, really useful thing to do, really tool, I guess is the right word, a really useful tool to help me understand why I'm doing what I'm doing, and how to kind of get a grip on the things that are seemingly powerful emotions. So, yeah, that was a really valuable thing, to be able to interact directly with yourself like that. I think another nice thing about going out into the nature is this pace reset you get. We get so ramped up, and we live in such a fast life. We have such a fast life nowadays. There's constantly new information. We're driving here. We got to be there. We got to be there. We're waiting for this. We're waiting for, like, we're constantly moving. Constantly need to be doing something. Everything is so fast. Even if we're home relaxing, we're constantly moving. There's very little time to just quiet your mind and be calm and get back into the pace with nature again. And I think that's what kind of happens when you go out there for an extended amount of time, is you start to get back in sync with the natural rhythm. It's kind of a painful process, because it just pulls your energy down, slows you down a little bit. But it's also a comforting thing. It feels right. You get to be in there looking up at the trees, seeing the trees lean together with the wind, and looking up through the branches up at the sky. You get to appreciate that moment, which we don't really get in cities very often, unless you go to the park and spend some time. But it's not the same as being buried out in the woods. Another fun thing I did while I was out there is I did this experiment with fear, because there's a lot of fear out there, especially at night. I spent a lot of time during the day getting wood ready so that I could have a fire at the end of the night, so it's light and it's warm. And the fear, the direct interaction with fear that I would have is if you take a flashlight and you shine it out into the woods in the middle of the night. It's a terrifying thing. You're just waiting for that flashlight to pass over the eyes of a Sasquatch or a pack of wolves or something, waiting something. You're just expecting something's watching you out there. And there was even one night while I was standing by the fire, I could hear something moving, and it seemed like it was moving closer and closer. And then I could see this thing on the ground. It was kind of like in Caddyshack, when the gophers are like moving underneath the grass and the grass is pushing up behind them. It was kind of that sort of thing, except for the leaves. It was doing that with the leaves of the forest. And it kept getting closer and closer and closer. And I had like my shovel and I think a machete in hand. And I'm just ready for whatever's going to happen. I'm just like, and then eventually he pops out of the leaves, and it's this little armadillo just looking at me, saying, he wasn't trying to attack. He wasn't violent or anything. He was just like wandering by, and he kept walking along his way. I'd never even seen an armadillo at this point, other than one that had been pancaked in the road. But yeah, this is just this direct interaction with fear. So this experiment that I ran, it was 3 nights in a row. One night I was drinking alcohol around the fire, and just to see how I would feel with that in regards to the fear. One night I was smoking weed and getting stoned out there and seeing my reaction to the fear of the forest. And then the third night I was sober. There was a mix of these things the other nights, but for the sake of the experiment, it was these 3 nights. And what I noticed was that the night that I was drinking, it's not that the fear wasn't there, it's just I didn't care. The consequences of whatever would come out didn't matter. It's like I was all cocky and like, oh, whatever it is, I'll freaking handle it. It's not a big deal. I'll freaking take down a bear with this shovel. Like, no, you wouldn't. But that's what's going on in my head. It's like this false courage. They call it liquid courage for a reason. This false confidence. I guess it's good, and it's to a degree that can be helpful, but it's also impulsive and it can get you in a bad situation. I noticed when I was smoking, people talk about the paranoia that comes along with smoking weed, and that was definitely accurate out there. Is that smoking weed in the forest by yourself is terrifying. The paranoia was amplifying, and it's like any little crack of a stick or rustle of a leaf, I thought it was some monster coming to rip my guts and nuts out. It was a terrifying thing. And then sober, it was like the fear was still there, and I had this thought that I wanted to get into the van and get into this little safe spot that nothing could hurt me. But I was like, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to give in to this fear and hide away from it. I'm going to go out by the fire, have a weapon in my hand, and just choose to deal with whatever might come my way, if it just so happens to go that way. So that was something interesting about the sober mindset, is that it didn't make me less afraid, but it gave me the choice to be more brave. I had the opportunity to make that decision. There was a little bit more clarity and my conscious choice of what I wanted to do. So that was an interesting experiment to run. I think that's somewhat accurate with how those substances work. And the last thing I want to talk about being in the forest, I actually kind of touched on it with a little bit with the pace reset, and I would say if you want to have this experience too, something similar to this, if you go camping out in the woods or out in the forest or out into the desert or something like that for two nights minimum, and you'll start to get this. You'll start to realize how difficult it is to cook and keep things clean, how to keep yourself clean, clean water, using the bathroom, all these different little things. You notice how difficult it is out there after a couple days. So then when you come back to society, you have a greater appreciation for what it really is around us. Helps you acknowledge the fact that we actually do live in a really awesome time. And it's easy to forget that. But we truly live in the most convenient, easy time that it's ever been. 24/7 access to food. We can look up any information we want on the internet. Goods and bads to these things. But it's so easy and convenient nowadays. And it's nice to get a reminder of that and kind of quelch some of the bitterness and resentment that might come towards this world that's crazy in its own right too. But it's just nice to remember that life is good for the time being. And I think it's probably important to be able to, if anything, enjoy it while it lasts. We don't know how long the world's going to be as good as it is. I'm not saying shit's going to hit the fan or anything like that, so eat your Twinkies. I'm saying be appreciative of the people and the time that has gone into creating this world around us. That's the reminder that comes up, is that it reminds me to be appreciative of this. It makes me always think of this example that I've talked about with my friends, where it's like, if I had a pig and a cow and a chicken in front of me and I needed breakfast, I wouldn't know what to do. I don't know how to get bacon from the pig. I don't know how to get butter from this cow. I guess I can figure out eggs pretty straightforward, depending on the chicken. That's pretty straightforward. But I don't know how to make breakfast from these things. But when I'm back in civilization, I'm able to go to the store and I'm going to select from all these different products. I can come home, I can put them in my refrigerator to store them for later. I can put butter in a pan. I don't know how to make a pan. I don't know how to make a stove. I don't know how to make a fridge. Any of this stuff. Like, we just have these appliances around us that make life so easy. And I can make a delicious breakfast with such little effort. And it's such a basic thing that we forget, I think, that I forget, that's around us. And it's an important thing to remember. And just spending at least two nights minimum can get you that appreciation again. Because after leaving the forest, honestly, I was pretty ready to go. It was rough. It was rough out there. It was fun, but it was also really difficult. It was nowhere near as fun as I was hoping it was going to be. It was way more challenging than I thought. But coming back, I stayed a couple nights at a KOA and got my water tank dumped and my other water tank filled up, got my batteries recharged and all that. But the best thing by far was a hot shower. Oh my gosh, appreciating that hot shower was so glorious after 10 days of not getting clean. And I wiped my face and stuff a little bit, but getting a hot shower was fantastic. Can't talk about how amazing a hot shower is after that long. Ice cold water, also delicious. Being able to stop at a freaking breakfast place and get eggs over my hammy, and life is just good. You just appreciate how how good of a world that we have, you know. And also, we have candy and snacks everywhere. I love candy and I love snacks. So I can just appreciate the world a little bit more, you know, when you're held back from it, when you consciously choose to hold yourself back from these conveniences for a few days. All right, on that note, I think I'm gonna be wrapping this one up. And yeah, I spent a good couple months in Texas, and I have plenty of other things to talk about that went on here. I spent some time on Padre Island, saw my buddy get married. Had a good time here. So that's probably what I'll be talking about next. A little bit more time spent in Texas. Other than that, I just appreciate you taking the time to listen, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the day. I got a bunch of trash in here to dump. A bunch of that made it. Just pack it in, pack it out.